Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jackie and today I am here to do my March wrap up. So March was a very strange month for me as far as reading life and my personal life. Going to my reading life, I'm trying to make this breathe. I was in a reading slump for the first 2 weeks of this month and it was horrible. And then I eventually did get out of the slump and was able to read a lot more than I was reading during that slump. And in my personal life, to make it even worse, which I think this led to me being in a reading slump, I started a part-time job at the beginning of the month, and that took up a chunk of my time. And then also I was focusing a lot more on school. Now that the semester is winding down, I wanted to focus a lot of my time on school. So that is kind of how my month went briefly. With that being said, I did manage to finish 7 books, so without further ado, I'm going to jump right in and get started. So I'm actually going to start off with a little bit of some statistics for you guys. So I read 7 books, like I said, and I only own 1 of the books that I read. All the others were either library books, ebooks, or audiobooks. So that's kind of a breakdown of what formats I read my books in this month. And as far as star ratings, they range from a 2-star to a 4-star. So they were kind of all over the place. Most of them fell within the 3 to 3.5 range. There was one that was very, very close to a 4-star. I'll talk about that in a second. So now I'm going to jump right into the actual wrap-up. So the first book I read this month was Ever the Brave by Eyre. This was the Peruse Utopia Book Club Book of the Month for the month of February, and this is the second book in the Clash of Kingdoms duology. The first book is Ever the Hunted. I read it last January and loved it. So I was very excited when Sasha and Reagan chose this as the book club book of the month for February. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to read it in February, obviously, but I was too invested in the story to put it down and return it to the library before I was able to read it. So this is a YA fantasy series that follows our main character Britta, who at the beginning of the first book, Ever the Hunted, is a bounty hunter, and she loses her father very unexpectedly. And she spends the entire first book pretty much trying to figure out what the hell happened and why her father was murdered. And she is led to believe that her father has been poisoned, but not, and also that her father's former apprentice was the one who murdered him. But of course, everything is not as it seems. This one was a great concluding novel to this duology. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed the first book a little bit more than the second book, but overall, I enjoyed it. I think it's a very underrated series. I believe the author is coming out with a 3rd book in this world, but not a part of the series this fall, I want to say. So I definitely will be checking this out. But overall, like I said, great concluding book to the duology, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next one I read this month was The Big Bad Wolf by Jessica Cardo. This was one I got sent to for review by Entangled Teen, so thank you so much to Entangled Teen for sending me an electronic copy of this book. This one I did a blog tour with on my blog, so the link will be down below to both of the blog posts I did for this book. This is a new adult paranormal romance that follows werewolves. Now, I haven't read a paranormal romance book in a very, very long time. The last time I read a full-blown paranormal romance that had this level of romance was when I read Twilight, and that's over a decade ago. So it's been a while. This book was not for me. Again, I don't typically reach for new adult unless it is new adult fantasy, then I'll reach for it anytime. And I don't normally reach for paranormal romance. Those 2 genres are just not for me. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. If it interests you, I would pick it up, but just not for me. The next book I read this month was And Then There Were None. I almost said Murder on the Orient Express. And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. And this is a adult psychological thriller mystery that it follows 10 characters who are sent to an isolated island pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and one by one they are killed off, and that is not a spoiler, it is in the synopsis. This one I read from March Mystery Madness, which was a month-long readathon I participated in the month of March. I will link my TBR on the screen. And this one I liked a lot better than Murder on the Orient Express, which I read last December. This one was just more engaging, and I was able to connect with the characters a lot more. So overall enjoyable read, and I will definitely be picking up more of Agatha Christie's work, and I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. The next one I read was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This is one I had been listening to on audio for like a month before I finally finished it. This is a classic novel that I'm sure all of you guys have heard of in some point in your life. This is my mom's favorite book of all time. The reason I picked this up is because I have an arc of a retelling of this book. You guys will see that in my April TBR because it comes out in May. And I never read the original story, so I wanted to give it a chance, and I really wish it hadn't taken me almost a month to read this book. I was just kind of bored. I don't really like classics, so I just wanted to give this book a chance. It just wasn't for me. I gave it 3 stars. I think the writing style was good from what I could hear in the narration, and I did really like the narration. So I gave props to the book for that, but that was about it. So like I said, 3 out of 5 stars from me. The next book I read was Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This was another March Mystery Madness read. This is an adult psychological thriller that is a whole new level of thrillers for me. This is a book that takes place in Atlanta, and it follows 2 sisters who 20 years prior had lost their sister after she had been kidnapped and was murdered. And then 20 years later, they reunite because they hadn't stayed in contact over those 20 years. And one of the sisters, her husband is murdered, and the 2 sisters, like I said, reunite to try to figure out what happened. And overall, wow, this book was intense. It was just a whole new level of intensity for me. Like I said, it was gruesome and, grabbed your attention right from the get-go. It was very good. It blew my mind, to say the least. And just be warned going into this book, if you guys are interested in picking it up, it is very gruesome. There's some very graphic content in this book, but that's what made me really like it. The stuff is kind of messed up, but it just added this new level to the story. So overall, like I said, I really enjoyed it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next one I read was the chapter by chapter book club book of the month for the month of March. I almost said September for some reason, and that was Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This is one of my most highly anticipated releases of this year. This came out on March 6th, and this is a YA high fantasy novel that follows our main character Zelly, and she is living in a world where magic used to be flourishing all over the land, and then one day it disappears. The king was able to find something to destroy magic, and then 10 years later we follow Zelly as she teams up with a rogue princess as well as her brother to somehow bring magic back. This is inspired by West African mythology, which I thought was really interesting. And overall, I really did enjoy this book. It is worth the hype in my opinion. I didn't enjoy it as much as some other people did, but it still was very enjoyable. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I do have a full non-spoiler review up on my channel for you guys, so I will link that on the screen if you guys are interested in checking it out. And we will also be having a live show on this upcoming Saturday, April 7th, here on this channel. So when that goes live, I will also link it on the screen as well as below. And the last book I read this month was The Shining by Stephen King, another March Mystery Madness read. This one was a letdown for me. I read Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King last month in February, and I really enjoyed that book, so I was like, I need to continue on with more Stephen King in March, and this one just didn't do anything for me. It was classified as horror, but I didn't find it scary at all. I thought it was kind of boring. It is a cult classic novel, which I'm sure a good majority of you guys have heard about some point in your life. It has a massively successful movie out in the world, which I haven't seen, and I do plan on watching that. For me, this book just didn't get interesting until the very end. The last 100 pages or so were the good part. I still love the writing style. I think Stephen King has this great writing style that I love. But other than the ending and the writing style, I didn't really enjoy anything about this book. Some of the characters were also very interesting, but again, it was just overall a meh book. So I gave that a 3 out of 5 stars. That is everything I read in the month of March, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give a big thumbs up and subscribe if you have not already. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The links that I read to the books that I read this month will be linked down below for you guys, along with all my social media links. And with all being said, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you soon for another video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye!